Okay, so I will call the regular Wednesday, June 15th, 2016 Oregon City Commission meeting to order. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Pauly?
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Here. And if you'll please stand and join me at flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so under ceremonies and proclamations tonight, we have 16 through 56, introduction of the Oregon City Toastmasters, presented by Eric Bergman, Willamette Division Governor for District 7 of Toastmasters. Eric?
I'm Eric Bergman, and I'm representing Toastmasters as a volunteer leader as part of District 7 Toastmasters, covering Oregon and Southwest Washington. And I thank you for the chance to speak tonight. Here in the city at the end of the Oregon Trail, there is such a rich pioneer story. So many firsts here. The first territorial capital, first city west of the Rocky Mountains. And the people who came and settled here were here for opportunity. And the opportunity brought the pioneers here, and it's what still brings the newest residents here every day. The city's future is still being shaped, and its story is still being written. And one thing I know from my career in public relations is if you are not telling your story, someone else is telling your story for you or about you. And so it's so important, I believe, that city employees, city staff have the opportunity to learn how to tell the city's story, express the city's viewpoint when they're interacting with citizens, and to keep the opportunity rich here in the city and in the county. And one way to tell your story more powerfully, whoever you are, is through Toastmasters training. Toastmasters International is the world's largest nonprofit educational group devoted to leadership training and communication skills. And as I said, I'm a volunteer here, as are all the local Toastmasters, thousands of us in some 170 clubs across Oregon, Southwest Washington. And I'm proud to say that one club here, Oregon City Toastmasters, has been operating since 1946. And some of its members are here tonight. It's open to the public, and we also have two other clubs over at Clackamas County for the county employees only. And the reason Toastmasters exists is to help anyone learn the art of speaking, listening, and thinking. Now, Toastmasters has a 90-year history, and worldwide more than 350,000 members in 140 countries. It's a huge global organization. And we build the skills that employers value and that a democracy needs. And those would include how to give timely, constructive feedback, how to listen attentively, how to organize teams of volunteers, and how to run effective meetings. In all, some 75 different skill areas are covered by the Toastmasters educational program. And each of us, when we join Toastmasters as a brand new member, we start by telling a story about ourselves, an icebreaker speech, so that other people get to know us. And by doing that, we practice what Toastmasters calls the habit of courage. So the habit of courage. We're facing down the fear of public speaking. We're putting ourselves up front to be heard. And really, until about 9 years ago when I joined Toastmasters, I really had no way to address my fear of speaking. It's been an exceptional experience for me, and it's really shaped my life since then. And it's what brings me here today to talk about how it can expand here within Oregon City. And I found that when I joined Toastmasters, I was starting to write a new chapter in my own life story, speaking with confidence and helping others reach their professional and their personal goals. And you can pursue the Toastmasters experience as far as you want from that first icebreaker speech. In fact, over at Clackamas County, their communications director, Gary Schmidt, rose from nervous, non-speaker, all the way to international president of the entire organization. Right here in Oregon City, a great resource, Gary Schmidt. And usually we're building ourselves up. We're not competing against anyone except to be a better version of ourselves. But for those who like competition, Toastmasters puts on the World Championship of Public Speaking every year. And since 2004, I'm proud to say, 2 of the world champions have come from our district here in Oregon. So at every meeting, Toastmasters gather to learn, to stretch, and to find their voice. They tell their stories proudly and with power and passion. It's a high-quality program at a very low cost of just a little over $100 per year, and the payoff is priceless. In conclusion, I offer my help and the help of other Toastmaster leaders here locally to start a chapter here at the City Hall. There's a demo meeting on July 19th, and Jamie Reed is the contact for anybody who wants to know more. And I do this because I believe that the next chapter in Oregon City's history deserves to be well told. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thanks, sir. So now we're up to citizen comments. I don't see anything on my screen.
There are none.
So last chance if you're a citizen and wish to comment. Father Time doesn't have anything to say today. That's unusual. So we'll move on to everybody okay with the agenda?
Yep.
All right, then we'll go on to public hearings.
We're not asking.
Oh.
I
Oh,
want to pull something from the consent agenda whenever the time is right.
oh, this will be as good as any which.
The 15th Avenue project.
So 16-327, 8A. First item on the consent agenda?
That's it.
Okay. So we're going to move 8A, and we'll see that after the information on the Clackamas Cities and County Summit of Transportation. So moving right along, we'll go to 16-352, appeal of Public Works Director's decision of system development charges for two-story office building at 415 Center Street. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for taking the time to hear this appeal. This is appeal of the Public Works, my decision, I guess, to implement system development charges for a two-story office building at 415 Center Street. I know Todd Island's here. I'm assuming this is Bill Wickenbach? Yes. Okay. Bill is with, Bill and Todd are both representing BC Custom Construction, who are hoping to build a building at 415 Center Street. And this appeal is pretty straightforward. You might remember this issue from 2014, for those of you that were serving on the commission at that time. So in 2014, the City Commission adopted a handful of modifications to Chapter 1320 of the Oregon City Municipal Code, which is the city's SDC code. One of the changes include the definition of most recent structure or use. The time frame of most recent structure or use is significant because you meet the definition, you're eligible for an SDC reduction, and that's what we're talking about. The applicant would like to see a reduction in SDCs based on that definition of most recent use. The City Commission, through the adoption, changed the time allowed from 18 months to 10 years. So if you had a facility or a building, prior use on that structure, that's the definition of what that prior use was. And if you got an existing building on there today, it's pretty straightforward. If your building has not been there for several years, it's not so straightforward. So back in 2014, the City Commission deliberated at length about this definition and the time frame, and landed on the 10-year time frame. There was a variety of suggestions on what that should be, everything from no time frame, it should just run, the property should just run, and if there's a record of any kind of development on that, property, then they should be granted some form of a reduction. 2, leaving it the same as it was at 18 months. Staff proposed something a little unique, which was if there was development on the property within 4 years of the prior use, that they would get a full 100% SDC reduction, and then if they developed within the 4 to 8 year time frame, they would get a 50% reduction. That generated a fair amount of discussion and added some complexity to an already pretty complex complication. So I think the City Commission decided 10 years made the most sense, and that's the time frame that's now in the code. There's a little bit of latitude for staff on this issue with the determination is a permitted use. So we looked pretty hard at this particular piece of property to find out, because there was some permit history on this in our Eden system that showed that the property had applied for some like pre-application meetings, went through, I think, historic review. Can't remember all the details, but none of those resulted in a permitted use. So even though we looked back through all our permit history, we didn't find anything that we felt met the threshold of the definition of recent structure or most recent structure or use. So that puts us at a 10-year limit. The building, I believe, burnt down on October 10th, 2002 was the date the applicant provided. And so it's now, I guess the other thing I would say is we've been talking to this applicant for a little while, and they maybe 6 months, or I'm trying to remember the time frame, but so just keep that in mind as well. They're still over the 10-month period, but it's probably not the full 14 years, something less than that. So again, our recommendation is to uphold what's in the SDC code, which is a 10-year limitation. In your packet, there's a summary sheet that shows the amount of the SDC, and in this case, it's $51,554.82 for a new building, and I want to say it's about a 2,400 square foot building. I don't recall the specific number, but it's in that range. It's office use, and the SDC summary includes SDCs for our full range of SDCs, which includes transportation vehicles, transportation bike ped, sanitary sewer for both Tri-City and Oregon City, stormwater, water for South Fork and for City, and parks. So with that, it's as if there was never a prior use, and that's the way we interpret the code. So I know the applicant's here to
Hang on.
say something as well.
So does anybody here have any questions of Mr. Lewis at this point?
In what state of repair are the systems surrounding this development? Are they in need of significant investment to be able to accommodate this use?
We really haven't evaluated those systems specifically for this use. It's our understanding that things like water line connections and sewer line connections can be made to the facilities as they are and used for this particular use.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So remind us what it would be if they applied for reductions, and if anybody does and gets approved. Is it a 50% reduction? Is it a sliding scale? How does that exactly work? And then the other question is, it says in their letter that they were approved by the Historic Review Board, and I know that was in a building permit, but they were actually approved by that board, and kind of what that means and how much weight that has.
Okay, so the first question is, do we have a sliding scale, or is it all or nothing? And in this case, it's all or nothing. So if you meet the 10-year threshold, you would get, in this case, there was an existing residential home on the property. So they would get the credit of an existing home, and it'd be great if I recalled exactly how much the SDC credit was for that, but I want to say it's in the range of $27,000 or $28,000 that they would receive in terms of a credit for that prior use. Or reduction, I should say. It's not a credit, it's a reduction. The other question was related to...
In their letter for request, it said that they got approved by the Historic Review Board, and how much weight does that have? And because I know it's not, they weren't permitted,
Yeah.
but they did get an approval letter.
I will have to check the record on that, but my recollection is they applied for that. I don't know that they went through the complete process, because we
Okay.
were looking for that, any kind of approval really, that would say that use. So the applicant may be able to
Okay, sure.
provide a little more clarity
Okay.
there, but my recollection is no, that they applied, but they didn't go through the full process and never received an approval.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? So I have one question, Mr. Lewis. When we look at the documents under their application, the Assistant Development Charges Request Form, if we look down at the detailed description of proposed use, it says replacement dwelling. But this is not a replacement dwelling. This is an office building, which is different than a dwelling. Is that not right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so if nobody else up here has any more questions for Mr. Lewis, I will open the public hearing. The applicant has 15 minutes, and then we'll move on. So if you guys want to come up, please introduce yourselves for the record.
Todd Iceland with Iceland Architects, and been here in front of you before. Similar request, and appreciate this opportunity again. This one is, like every other project, very unique. The process was actually started with another firm in 2006 or 2007, shortly after Mr. Wickenbach bought the property, and then things kind of went a little sideways with the economy and everything, and it was kind of abandoned without completing the site design review or getting the final Historic Review Board approval at that time. Since then, in the last year, we have gotten the Historic Review approval. Building permits are ready to be picked up for this, but he's not picking the permits up until we get this resolved. So it has been through the Historic Review Board, site design review. Engineering is all complete. Project includes half-street improvements on Center Street, reconstructing the alley, stormwater improvements, which will all benefit the city. All of the utilities are there in place and can be connected to. So that's why we're asking for this request, because there is no new infrastructure really needed. He's actually installing and providing new infrastructure for the city in addition to the SDCs. So that's why we're here. So Bill can...
My name is Bill Winkenbaugh. I'm the owner of BC Custom Construction and the owner of the property on 415 Center Street. And I'm coming before you, I'm hoping to kind of give a little more depth into the experience I've had with that lot and give you a sense of what I'm doing and what I've been through. I might preface as a start that I don't know if you know that this building that we're in is a building that my company developed, and Oregon City bought it from me, and we had a lot of fun rebuilding this building. We didn't do the tenant improvements, but we had it down to the studs when it was bought by Oregon City. This was the horse corral over on this side, and we found all kinds of really fun articles in the wall. But the lot that we bought there at 415 Center Street, when we bought it, we designed a building to be built there and had the full intention of building it. It was a beautiful building that we had designed. It was very similar to your city hall and very similar to the church across the street. And we had the building complete design, went before historic review, and we were soundly turned down. That was not the look that they wanted. So we stopped and redesigned, and I worked with somebody who was on the historic review board to redesign a completely different look. But designing it with someone on the historic review board, I was getting the approval all the way through of a building that was going to be accepted. We had that design completely done, and we pretty much had everything in terms of historic review, in terms of a nod, but not official. And it was at that time that the economy was starting to turn so bad that it became evident that we were not going to be able to build the building. We have since had the economy recover, and we have been with Todd trying to redesign and establish another building to build. I know that it's not maybe that pertinent, but to me it is. I have tens of thousands of dollars in the first design, that over again in the second design, and I've like $30,000 in the third design, and I've been actively working on this project and trying to bring it to fruition for well over 10 years. And so, yes, maybe the letter of the law is that I had to have been within the 10 years to have actually permitted, but I've truly been in process and have been spending money with the city in an endeavor to develop this property for some time. And I think that when you look at the requirements that I have in order to develop it, as Todd's pointed out, I'm not asking for anything additional in the way of system developments. If anything, I am conversely doing things that are improving. So it seems hard for me to have to pay an amount of money for system developments when I don't have any system developments, but I'm actually doing system developments that are over $50,000. I have to improve the storm and put a new manhole out in the middle of Center Street, and I have to do a half-street improvement in front of my lot. So I'm already in to system developments, well north of $50,000, besides $30,000 in the latest endeavor to get historic review. I just think I've been diligent in my endeavor, and it's been going on evidently for a long time. I know that the code is pretty concise, and that's why I know John tried hard to find a way to help us on this, but he just couldn't find the perfect angle to get it. But when you look at the whole experience, I've been engaged in trying for well over 10 years to develop this. And frankly, at the $50,000 of SDC charges, in addition to the $50,000 of my doing SDCs, it becomes unbuildable for me. And I'm back in the same position of having a lot that is kind of an eyesore to the neighborhood that really needs to be developed. So I would plead that you would be considerate of my circumstances and try to be as lenient as you could possibly. Is there anything, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was it.
Okay, so we'll move on to the rest of it, and then we'll have a discussion. Thanks for your time. Are there any?
Well, I did pull up the permit history, so I'll go through it for you a little bit since the question came up.
Well, John, we're in the midst of the process now, so if we have those questions, we'll ask them at that particular time. So, do we have anybody from a recognized neighborhood association? Really, McLaughlin chose to stay silent. That's interesting. Government agency? No. Or incorporated public interest or organization? And nobody from the public. Okay, so there is no reason for the applicant's rebuttal. Now, Mr. Lewis, if you want to enlighten us on the application process or whatever you're going to do.
Well, I was just going to let you know that there was a historic review application in January of 2008. Again, our permit system doesn't necessarily tell us much other than it was never issued. So there was an application but no issuance. So that was the one piece. That was one question that I didn't answer very well. So I thought I'd share that. The other thing, maybe Bill can help me here a little bit, is just when on making these decisions in a subjective way, it puts us in a precarious situation next time. So I just want you to
Okay,
keep
before
that
we
in mind.
go into discussions with Mr. Kapaisman, is there any other? No, I'm going to close the public hearing. Now, does anybody have questions of staff?
I have a question. What is the estimated investment that's planned with this development, should it move forward?
I don't. You mean how much is the value of the building that's going to be placed there? Ooh, I don't know that I have that information. I don't know if the applicant can answer that.
I have to reopen the public hearing.
Is it that important to your thought process?
I think it's a 2,400 square foot, 2-story office building.
Okay. Is it, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The half street improvement that was mentioned in the new manhole, I don't recall that in other, as in other building rebuilds before. Is that typical, or is there a certain reason why that is required for this? I mean, I know sidewalks are and that type of thing,
There's always sidewalk there.
but I'm just curious if there's different circumstances here.
So for residential development, we require either development of street improvements or improvement of street improvements up to 10% of the value of the building. Commercial, it's site plan design review, so the manhole, for instance, is needed, I believe, for the connection of the building and the way we want that to be connected to our pipeline. So we would require the manhole. The frontage improvements are more associated with the deterioration of the existing street frontage. So we require that of a developer to reconstruct frontage improvements when they're in something less than new condition.
So what is being required of them is typical?
Yes.
Okay,
Typical.
okay.
So the development by Carol's Place at, would it be Monroe and 6th, that was there a half-street improvement required on both Monroe and 6th?
Yeah, I think so.
Monroe.
That's the four,
The small house.
those four little condos or whatever they are?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was required.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Somebody else?
I have a
And there
question.
was a house there.
Mr. Megaberg.
I'm assuming that Oregon City also offers an opportunity for applicants to pay systems development charges over time. They can Bancroft bonds,
Yes.
so that might.
We do
soften
offer that. We're not a lending organization, so typically the rate isn't such that people choose to go that way, but that is an option.
Anybody else? So, Mr. Lewis, is they have to do half-street improvements, even though the sidewalk and everything is already there. So they have to put in a new sidewalk? Okay. Now, the 10-year window would be whether if they're just going to put a new house on there, they would still be responsible for the $50,000.
It would be less for residential.
It would be less for residential. So
Okay.
they would be responsible for a residential SDC, which
Okay.
again is around $27,000 or $28,000.
Okay, good, thanks.
Commissioner Smith?
I just have a hard time with this one because it is, we extended that period quite extensively, and it's very hard to not be consistent, and so we kind of have to stick with it. If we make an exception for one property, then we're going to have to deal with all of them. And I don't know how to do that.
Is there a question in there somewhere?
No, it's just,
Okay,
I didn't have a
just checking.
question. You asked me to say something, so
So-
I'm just struggling with that.
No.
I don't think there's much choice we have here on this.
So from a legal standpoint, Mr. Kabaisman, is it an all or nothing proposition, or is there something in the middle?
The way the code is set up, it's all or nothing. You know, I offer two observations, given the discussion that might be helpful. All development in the city really has two components of improvement. One is making sure the site is served by public facilities. That's the water, making sure that you can get it to there's safe transportation. There's also the SDCs cover other things. When you bring in new development, you bring in a certain number of new trips that go through Beaver Creek Road, that may go through 99, that may require additional reservoir space. And that's what SDCs cover, is the additional demand on city systems that aren't, specifically tied to a property. So there's sort of two different elements, and want to make sure you keep that in mind. The other piece really goes to the all or nothing. Your code imposes the SDCs, but it allows for a reduction in the event of redevelopment, and you have made a choice, you know, and when you draw a line, there's almost always difficult choices on either side of that line, and that's I think what you're facing here, where, you know, you've drawn a line.
Okay, so let me be clear. I wasn't here at the time those guys drew that line, so although my partner Betty was, and we had a lively conversation about, you know, where that line should be.
And we can change it.
Unfortunately,
Again, but-
my particular persuasion did not prevail in that particular conversation. So we are confronted with the fact that we have set a limit, and unfortunately, this applicant doesn't reside within that limit. So the question for us is, do we wish to, at our discretion, waive the entire amount of the SDC? Because I don't think we can go half, right? There's no provision for that.
The way the code is set up, you got the fee, and either, you know, you can reduce it by the amount of the previous, or you don't. So, you know, it's not a matter of waiving all of it, but you've got, you know, the fee is about $51,000. Is that right?
Yes.
And if in fact they were to meet that 10-year period, what you do is subtract the amount attributable to the previous. So you've got an office building, 51,000 SCC. You've got a residence that was previously there, so it'd be 28,000. So, you know, to some extent you could view it as half, but, you know, that it's not waiving the fee entirely.
The pleasure of the commission.
Well, just to be clear, the limit was already set at 18 months. We actually extended it to 10 years, which we thought was very, very liberal. At the time, it seemed to make sense to us. The problem I'm having with this one is it's the same owner, and the owner has been trying to develop the property, and their circumstances out of control. I mean, the economy was very tough, really very hard to get lending. That's the problem I'm having, is this is the same owner that's been going through the process, and that makes it harder for me, less cut and dry.
Anybody else?
For me, I tend to want to look at the bigger picture, a vacant lot in the city or new development. And so I would be leaning toward leniency or dividing it in half, because we don't want to be seen as so onerous that nothing will pencil, and we're going to scare away new development. And the assessed value that will come from this new development is all to the benefit of the city, and the impact on the systems, since they're already in place, is not so great. So I would stand toward leniency on this case.
I would agree with Commissioner Mellenberg, and I know that BC Construction has been in the community a long time here, and I would say if we could, I think it's half. Did we go half or something like
It's
that?
not quite half, but we could go to what the system development charges would be if it was a replacement residence versus a commercial structure.
So we just have to be careful how we.
Well,
we've got
we
to
can let
make
staff do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we just got to make sure how we say this, so we're not setting the precedent for future
Well,
items on it. So
if we're going to do that, then we need to extend the deadline and make it consistent for everybody again. I don't think we can do anything other than that. So if it's 15 years and we change it again, then do that. Because I don't think picking and choosing who gets to, I think that's a bad
You're going to
situation
set
to be
yourself
in.
for an allegation of being arbitrary when the next person comes in and they happen to be a female developer or some other.
Thanks for that little bit of encouragement, Bill. Mr. Lewis.
So, I'm really concerned about the idea of again, stepping onto the slippery slope for the city commission. We're going to see a lot of these come through all of a sudden. I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the development requirements for these frontage improvements. It sounds like, I don't know, the value of those sounds like they're similar in terms of 50,000. If we're going to compromise, I'd rather compromise on that front than this front. It's either that or direct us to come back with a different definition, and I feel like we've been through that. But so I'm not as keen on that either. But I guess I would, rather work on, maybe we leave the old sidewalk or something, and live with the old curb and sidewalk. Maybe ask them to replace the pavement. I haven't studied it that much, but I'd rather work at it from that angle than something else. But I just can't give you a for certain answer about how much the value of that really is tonight.
So let me ask you this, and I don't know if this is some kind of violation, Bill, just close your ears. How many more of these kinds of things do we have in the pipeline? I mean,
I think you would open up the door to everyone who develops in Oregon City coming in and asking for a reduction.
Past and present, possibly. I don't know.
That would be fair.
Then I would propose that we continue this to the second meeting in July and give Mr. Lewis an opportunity to work with the applicant to see if you can find a reasonable compromise that stays within the code. Are you okay with that?
We will certainly do that if that's the direction of the commission. I'd just like to remind, we in Oregon City, historically, we have gotten our improvements as development happens. So, while it is, while we may have a little more flexibility in determining what constitutes a half-street improvement, this is extremely typical in terms of what we exact for development in Oregon City. So while we may be avoiding an SDC slippery slope, you may be opening yourself up to asking folks coming in and asking for the engineering department to not make needed infrastructure improvements to reduce the cost. So we will be happy to go back and look. It's a different slippery slope. But once again, if that's the direction of the commission, we will go look at it. It's just we do not have transportation funding as it is. And so this is right, wrong, or indifferent how Oregon City has historically gotten improvements to its infrastructure. So
Okay.
just with that.
So with Mr. Conkle's comments, does anybody have any other thing to say or thoughts?
And if there's a trend of developers saying that projects don't pencil because of the SDC charges, and it means that we're not going to see as much new development in the city than we would otherwise, then maybe we need to look at what we charge or something to make it not as onerous as we're hearing.
But then again, a 200-foot length of 8-inch water line is what it costs. And I am reasonably sure that our system development charges are based on actual numbers and verified data as far as what these things cost. Otherwise, I mean, there is some formula to generate these SDCs, right?
You've adopted a capital improvement plan and the cost of building out the system to
Various
serve all
pieces,
future
right.
residents was based on engineers' estimates, and that's broken down by future developments. That's where those numbers come from. You're stuck between funding the improvements that are needed or not funding them and having inadequate facilities at some point in the future.
So I guess what I'm suggesting is let's take one more bite at the apple, work with the applicant, see what we can and can't do, and then we can still make this same decision at the second meeting in July. And if it turns out that you guys think that the things that you've talked about put us on a slippery slope, then we'll have to evaluate that at this particular point in time. But at least for me, I think I'd like to let staff take one more opportunity to see if we can find a way to come to something that fits the code and is still able to help the developer with a piece of property that is in Old Town and has been served by a street since probably the late 1840s. You know, we've had water and sewer line there, all that sort of thing. I drive down that particular stretch of Center Street quite often, and it doesn't appear to me, I mean, nothing screams out at me that that particular half street of pavement is any worse than any other half street of pavement anywhere in the McLaughlin neighborhood. So,
I would agree. This is our first visit with this here tonight, and I, in light of what staff has brought in here, this in the discussion here tonight, I think I'd rather see us take a little time at it once
so
again.
Is there a motion to continue until the second meeting in July?
I move to continue item 16-352 until July 15th, whatever date that is.
Yeah, the second meeting in July is close enough. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Mengelberg, seconded by Commissioner Shaw. Is there any further discussion? Call the roll.
Just real quick, the second meeting in July is going to be July 20th.
Okay.
Okay, so clarity.
We've got a date certain.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Polly,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. Okay, so moving on. 16-325 under general business, purchase and sale agreement, due diligence extension request for the 12th and Main Street project. Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, Mayor. The developer, 12th and Main, has requested a 90-day due diligence extension. They've been progressing, working on a site design, working with an architect. However, they've discovered some issues on the site that have caused some concern and a need for them to go back and kind of go back to the drawing board, basically, literally. So they've actually hired a new architect, and they're doing a brand new site design, and they would just like some time to finish that work and to go through a pre-app meeting to get planning's feedback.
Questions?
No. I'd make a motion there. Move to approve 16-325 for the extension request for 12th and Main.
Second.
Further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Polly,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. So moving on, 16-358, the resolution number 16-14, supporting continued staffing and funding of the Oregon City High School Construction Group. Before I turn this over to Mr. Conkle, Commissioner Mengelberg sent out a text message earlier today saying that she'd run into Superintendent Didway yesterday or the day before, and that he had assured her that the district has a commitment to continuing the construction group at the high school and are looking at apparently a qualified candidate. I feel like it's incumbent upon us to go ahead and continue this resolution and give it to the school board just as a supporting the group that's done so much good work with us over the years and letting them know how valuable we consider that group to be at the high school. So, Mr. Conkle.
Thank you, Mayor. Evening, Commissioners. At the last City Commission meeting, you asked for a resolution in support of the Oregon City High School Construction Group. We've attached the proposed resolution highlighting the amazing opportunity that program provides to students for job experience, real-life job training, working in the construction and building trades, and essentially having a high school class experience that can lead directly to employment once you graduate from high school in a needed job opportunity. Also wanted to recognize that this organization has done some amazing work in Oregon City in numerous parks, including Clackamas Park, Wesley Lynn Park, Hillendale Park, Barkley Park, and at the end of the Oregon Trail, end of the Oregon Territory Museum. And that's included a new stage, playground equipment, kiosks, restroom, pavilion, arbors, benches, birdhouses, just to name a few. And since the program began in 2008, they've received over $150,000 in grants and completed those projects here in Oregon City for the benefit of the city and the citizens and those users of our parks. And that does not include the volunteer time and volunteered materials and resources that went into those. And we also wanted to acknowledge, thank, and congratulate Mr. Britt Tucker, the teacher who has recently retired from Oregon City High School, who has led that program through these numerous years. So this resolution does acknowledge and lets the school district know that we appreciate the relationship that we have with them, and that we hope that they continue the Oregon City High School construction project and they continue to do great things for our community. That concludes my presentation.
Discussion, Commissioner Smith?
I move to approve resolution number 16-14. Resolution number 16-13. No,
it's
It's 14.
it is 14. Supporting the continued staffing and funding of the Oregon City High School's construction group from the school district, not the city.
A second.
It's the next one down, the 16.
I know, I read that.
So, any further discussion?
I just want to say that we have such a limited budget for our parks, and this program has helped out so much and really increased the value of our parks. And also, I think the ownership that our citizens feel to the parks as being part of it and helping improve it themselves.
So, assuming this resolution passes, I will personally take it and read it into the record at the next available school board meeting that I can be at. So,
Right.
Further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Polly?
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Aye.
Mayor Holliday?
Aye. So, 16-357, resolution number 16-13, authorizing issuance of a permanent but revocable obstruction permit for existing or replacement fencing within the McKinley Avenue and Promontory Avenue rights-of-way. Mr. Lewis?
Thank you again, Mayor. This is a permanent but revocable obstruction permit for 801 Brighton Avenue. Wesley and Virginia Harper are the owners of that property. They wanted to be here tonight, but they were out of town for a graduation of one of their grandchildren. So I thought I would share that with you. They have, I don't know how long they've lived in this site, but the site has been landscaped and fenced for the way it is for many, many years, and they're asking to replace that. And when we realized it was in the right of way, we wanted to bring that before you to get that permission to go ahead and put that fence back in the same place and allow them to continue to use what they've been using as yard space for a long, long time. This is in a right of way that is
Unlikely.
unlikely to be used for pathway or roadway. So we didn't see it as problematic and asked you to verify that with your authorization.
So I've been to most houses in Oregon City at one time or another. I don't recognize this. What is on the other side of the fence where they show those flowers in this first picture?
A cliff.
Just the cliff, yeah.
100-foot
We're going
cliff.
down
So
the bank
That's
we're looking straight across to the Westland side then?
right here.
looking straight across the Westland
Yeah.
side. It's Waterboard Park below them.
Oh, okay. All right. Now I know where we're at. Thank you. Questions?
A question. So with this resolution, it's not giving them ownership of the property, it's just giving them the right to move the fence, correct?
To
Right,
rebuild
to
the fence.
build the
To
fence.
rebuild the fence.
Yeah, to rebuild the fence.
The fence was
Okay.
always in the right of way.
Yes.
So should they sell the property, it would be clear to the future owners that actually that part of the property is not theirs.
Well, we have a resolution, and we'll provide that. There is the disclosure piece that all property owners, good property owners, do when they sell property, but unless it's recorded at the county recorder's office, it wouldn't be listed on the title, and right now we don't have it set up for recording at the county.
And to be honest, once again, we're talking about a street plat or easement that can't be built for all intents and purposes, right? So the likelihood of the city needing it for anything would be pretty slim.
I guess I'd rephrase the can't, wouldn't. I don't see a use that would require anything more than what's there now.
So here's a question. How much of this is actually, how much of the property that's inside the city's right-of-way is actually inside that fence? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's
I'm assuming that's
fairly significant. I think it's like 30 feet within the right of way.
Oh, wow.
Right. So my question is, rather than doing this, why not have the property owner vacate that to their property, and then they're paying taxes on it?
The city vacate that property?
Well, or the applicant, I mean, they can
apply.
apply to have it vacated as well.
Is that park, or what is that? Is that an easement or
No,
something?
it's public street right away.
Was the street
You know,
was gonna keep-
my theory on it is that that area helps us to be able to kind of oversee the top of the bluff. If we needed to get in there, have that right of way to get in there to do something, whether it be fire or something else. I don't know. I don't envision any public infrastructure going in there. But I'm not really a strong advocate for vacating right away, because there's usually, then we got to think about it along other locations along that bluff, and there are other locations that I still have this subjective feeling that maybe we need to keep that, but it wouldn't be strong. And I just
Well, I owned a house at 13th Monroe, and 13th wasn't going to go through because it's about a 65-degree slope. So we vacated that street amongst 4 property owners, and whoever owns it now is currently paying taxes on that extra 30 feet. Seems to me that here, the likelihood of us needing that for anything, as you say, is 0 or almost 0. So why not, instead of this, have them vacate it? They own it, they take care of it, their fence is going to be on their own property, and we don't have an issue going on down the road in 25 or 30 years.
I'm thinking about
So are these two.
Thinking.
I just wonder how many people have inched their fence over the years,
Everybody.
towards and, not on their properties. So,
I'm just-
if it's
Many-
not their property, it's not their property.
Many of them have.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. We've had problems with promontory in the past. We've been noticing them about encroachments. We don't want new encroachments out there.
We don't want them
I'm not
cutting
trying to
down
come up with
trees.
reasons, but I'm going to come up with one more, which is just I'm a little bit. I think we have some control as we get closer and closer to that edge about what can and cannot go there. I'm not sure if we vacated that, they would. I think they'd be allowed to build some kind of a structure, maybe an accessory dwelling unit back there. I guess I'd look to Tony for that, but it seems like they could do something. And while it's, I don't know the full geology. I get that it's bedrock up there, but I just one of our concerns that started this whole thing was they started to build a wall out of masonry up there, and we weren't. Once that was reported, that's when we asked them to remove that and talk to them about the fact that their real concern was grandchildren in their backyard running off the back of the yard. And so we said, that's understandable. You had an old fence there. That should be something that we should ask the commission for authorization to put back.
It bothers me that they're using our land for free and they're not leasing it, they're not paying for it, they don't own it, and it just feels wrong.
But they're taking care of it for us. That's, if the fence moves in, what's going to
It's the
happen?
cities, they kind of own it.
Yeah, exactly.
And here's a little, it depends question for Mr. Kabizman. If we give them this authorization and it's city property and somehow the fence falls into disrepair and someone falls off the cliff, isn't that still our property and aren't we still liable?
So, anybody can sue anybody about anything. You've got 12 jurors up there.
Yeah.
Having said that, given that we have given over maintenance to these folks, we didn't take any other action other than authorize them, and the immunity for allowing people to access areas that you don't charge fees for, I'd feel relatively comfortable that, you know, we shouldn't be liable. Whether that's how we end up in court, I don't, you know, it's always tough to tell. I do want to respond to one thing I heard. When you say it's a city property, when you think of road right-of-way, it essentially is sort of a super easement, because when we vacate right-of-way, it goes back to the neighboring property owners, you know, and we don't charge money. The city doesn't get compensated for its money. So to a certain extent, they have, you know, they talk about property ownership as a bundle of sticks. They still have some sticks in that underlying property. And so, you know, there is at least a little bit of an ownership interest for those folks. We have the controlling interest, and we could tell them, no, you can't build your fence up there. We control it and do something else. But it really is, you know, there's at least some liability concern. I don't think that should drive this decision. It's more a question of, you know, do we need that road? Could the city conceivably need that road at some point in the future? What's the best solution up there?
So the fact that this is a revocable resolution, we could say in 10 years, we want that road, you need to move the fence back, or whatever.
Yeah,
but it's
if
ours.
the city wants to put a pathway along that cliff and build something similar to McLaughlin Promenade, you could tell them to all get their improvements out of there and build that.
Oh, yeah. And that wouldn't be hard.
No, it wouldn't be hard at all. But you never know.
So here's where I am. I have two possible resolutions of this, neither of which the property owners can be happy about. But I say either they apply for a vacation for that particular piece that they want to have, or they put the fence line on their property line. But I'm not inclined to allow them to continue to have a fence on city property and not be paying property taxes on the property.
Everybody would do it then. Yeah.
Or at
if they
least-
would be able to be allowed that.
So, like I said, I think just about everybody along Promontory has this problem, with the exception that they don't have an old fence. Or they may have an old fence, but they haven't come ask us to replace it.
Wow.
So we have,
Or on the promenade.
you know, Promontory is a pretty lengthy stretch where we have lots of situations like this, and I guess.
Well, and the resolution to that would be, okay, we found out about this through this one, and then we put in process a process of notification of those property owners that they may or may not have fences built on city property, and they need to, you know, have their property surveyed and move their stuff onto their own property.
Or when you replace your fence, you need to make sure it's on your own property.
I mean, that's something we could talk about in a work session later, but I'm not going to support this permit when there are two basic legal options for them to have a fence. Either they can put it on their property, or they can vacate that piece of city property to theirs.
Well, and I think it's important to think about how valuable that row is to us. Is that important for fighting fires? If there was a fire up there on the bluff, I mean, how important is that area of row for us? And if we allow it all to be, you know, taken up by people's backyards because they keep moving their fence further and further into row, then what consequences could that have?
Thought this was going to be easy, didn't you?
I thought this whole meeting was going to be easy.
If it were 1 foot or 2 foot or 3 foot, that's an honest mistake. 20 or 30 feet, that's outrageous.
That's huge.
It's a lot.
It
but
is huge.
Then we got to think about, if we move the fence back, is what is that going to turn into? That 30 feet, just neglect, right? Now we do maybe have a fire issue, because who's going to take care of that 30 feet now? These folks are.
Mr. Lewis is. He's public works.
That's what scares. That's
That's
what
where we're
scares
going.
me. You know, I mean.
Okay, so let's get a quick sense of where we're at.
I'm with you, Mayor.
So am I.
So what's the verdict here then?
Well, I think for tonight, we deny the obstruction permit, and we instruct Mr. Lewis to get back with the applicant and provide them the other two solutions, which would be to build the fence on their own property line or to apply for a street vacation.
Okay.
I suspect they'll apply for the street vacation and be happy with
Okay.
it.
And as I recall, in the street vacation, they have to get, at least have to get their so does that go into water work? Okay, so it's just them then.
Well, the promontory does, which is also McKinley, and that fronts another
there's
property.
this-
Oh,
owner.
so
this street
they have
and
their
this
fence on
street.
McKinley too?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's even worse. Yeah. How are they accessing the property off of this street?
They exit off of Brighton, but they exit off of Brighton.
Okay.
So it's just two driveways,
Yeah, that's a huge chunk of land.
but this is the street.
Well, they've got half of their driveway on McKinley too,
Yeah,
and a whole fence line and all kinds of stuff.
both driveways. This house too.
So they would have to get, if they're going to do a vacation in
It
McKinley,
would go half here and here.
it would have to go to half of it would have to be
702.
applied to between 702 and 707.
702 and 801.
707 right here.
Does
Oh,
does
they
702
put it on
look
there, too.
familiar to any of you?
Does what?
Does 702 look familiar to any of you?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Oh no, really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's just a bonus. Okay.
That's the issue where we've had some tree cutting.
Yes.
Oh,
So we're all.
Now, there's no chance there'd ever be a pathway along the top there and stuff that, as we're all talking about new pathways and everything, that
there's a chance.
would that ever?
Have not looked at the Trails Master Plan. I don't know. I don't recall in the I know in the TSP there was no trail along there.
Okay.
So McKinley would, I guess would require that neighbor approval, and then we'll be back. Okay, so if the neighbor at 702 doesn't
Neighbors, 702 and 707.
Okay, if they don't, they're using it now. If I'm not quite sure why they would want the vacate, but if they deny it, then I guess we can still do a half. Can we still do half of a vacate?
I have to go back and look. I think that you'd still need the consent of a certain number of folks. I can take a look at that and figure out exactly where we are. I suppose the other option, if we can't get to that, is, the mayor was either vacation or build it on their property line.
Their property line is like within 8 feet of the back door.
Who's 702s or what?
No, 801.
Yeah.
The promontory property line looks by this map to be 5 to 8 feet off the back door.
Well, no, so it'd be their, literally they lose their whole backyard. But again,
Right.
it wasn't their whole backyard to begin with.
No,
don't
I
have
mean,
to have a fence.
I think they bought it like it sits today.
Yeah,
But it should.
but your title company and the other folks who showed you the documents should have been it should have been fairly clear that you don't own all this property.
I would have known if I'd have bought that house.
Right,
where
exactly my
property
point.
Yeah, it has to be
Wait.
disclosed, the property line.
We didn't know Singer Hill was on property.
was. It's not my
I
property.
mean, I have to admit that when I bought my house in the McLaughlin neighborhood, my little detached carriage house, which is what it was when it was built, actually sat 2 feet on my neighbor's property line. But because it had been there for 100 years, there wasn't really anything that could be done about it.
If if they go for the vacation, would it come? Does that go through staff or comes here?
Commission decision.
Okay, so I would.
It
I mean,
would require vacation, property
I would
description.
hate to tell them to go do this. They obviously have been through a process working with city staff to get to this point. And so then we're going to tell them either to remove it or to come back and come before us for a vacation when we may not even approve that.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, I think the likely, if we go back and look at history, I would, during my times on the commission and watching the commission,
Yeah,
street
I'm-
vacations are typically routinely approved because they're like this. The likelihood of us ever needing that for a street is like zero.
And I would think if they're going to go to the investment of building another fence, that they would want it to be on their property. They would want to own the fence. I would hope so.
Motion?
Not according to this, they knew this already, and they were going to rebuild the fence on our property.
I think the removal, the installation and removal of the block wall, the property owner said they've got $11,000 invested in this situation right now because they made the mistake of building the wall in the right of way without approval.
Well, at least they didn't build a swimming pool.
And they've had the,
That has happened in other cities, I know.
Westland, you think?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
and they've had the pleasure and enjoyment of 30 feet of our property for many years.
Motion?
Move to deny the resolution number 16-13.
I'll second that.
Jesus. You guys are killing me. Is there any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Polly,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
2/3 of the property owner is within,
Okay.
abutting and within 200 feet.
So now we're to 16376 Clackamas Cities and Counties Summit on Transportation Discussion and Recommendation. Mr. Conkle, you doing this one?
Yes, sir.
Well, please.
Okay. You can. I'm going to step out for just a minute. I'll be right back. You can go ahead, though. I was there.
I was hoping he was going to give the presentation. On Thursday, June 9th, the county held the Clackamas Cities and Counties Summit on Transportation, which is an opportunity for Clackamas County cities to discuss the results from the county's advisory measure to implement a vehicle registration fee and/or a fuel tax to address deferred transportation products, including but not limited to safety and maintenance. The cities have been asked to discuss the proposed options with the local jurisdictions, commissions, or council to determine the level of support for the funding proposal. Mayor Holliday, Commissioner Mengelberg were at the table for those discussions. Commissioner Shaw was in the audience participating and listening. So Mr. Lewis and I will be happy to kind of answer questions and help, but I was hoping that maybe you could give your perspectives as the commissioners who were there on the discussion. In the staff report, identified that the consensus seemed to be going with that the county needed to clarify that if you use the vehicle registration, you're required to share the proceeds that are created, and the proposal was 60% to the county, 40% to the cities. Once it was sent to the cities, it would be divvied up by population was an option. If they use a gas tax, the county does not necessarily have to send any of those funds to the local jurisdiction. So one of the requests was that the county clarify that whichever option, there will be funds sent to the local jurisdictions at a minimum of 60% to the county, 40% to the cities. And that the county should consider sending a minimum of 6 cents up to 10 cent countywide gas tax to the voters in November of 2016, and the consensus gas tax appeared to be 8 cents per gallon. That was because Portland just implemented the 10 cent per gallon, and they felt like to be a little bit more consistent while not more than Portland, that the 8 cents seemed to make sense while generating some additional revenues. The county did request a resolution of support should the cities decide to provide one, as well as a list of potential projects that would be implemented. We also did clarify that our understanding was that whether it was the vehicle registration fee or the gas tax that was collected, it could be used on maintenance, safety, or capital construction. So I've also attached the 4 documents that were prepared. The first document lays out the pros and cons of the vehicle registration fee versus the gas tax. The second looks at the potential revenues that are generated. The third looks at the revenues generated on a graph of gas tax versus vehicle registration fee, vehicle registered, and then the last one was the 2-page list of projects that the county's identified to spend the revenue on. So with that, I'd be happy to turn over to the commissioners who are there to add anything I've missed or any discussion they'd like to have.
I would be happy to. So I think the general consensus of the discussion was that because the county has the authority to pass a vehicle registration fee but does not have the political will or leadership to do so, that the group chose to support the gas tax. And then if the gas tax were to fail at the ballot, then maybe somehow magically the county commission would decide not to abdicate their authority and put this other thing out to a vote. That was the impression I got. I mentioned the fact that the Oregon City Commission had the political will to put a transportation maintenance utility fee to enact that without a vote of the people. We have had virtually no real backlash on that. I mean, I've had a few people call me, maybe 2 or 3 since I've been mayor, and ask me about why that's there. And once you explain the fact of, it being level over pretty much everybody, and it spreads it out, and it makes sense, and we have to take care of our infrastructure. I think in a representative democracy that we have, that we are elected to make these kinds of decisions. And if there truly is a backlash in the county, then the citizens have the opportunity to take that decision to collect the signatures in 90 days and refer it to the ballot if they feel that strongly about it. It's an unusual situation to get those people, and I know because I've run a county referendum and won, that you have to have people pretty worked up to get to a place to be able to produce that kind of a political situation. So I have a problem supporting this in the light that this is going to be on the same election as our CSAFE vote, and I don't want anything to get in the way of that. And this being as controversially as it could be, and I told them that. I said, that's how I feel. I think my commission is probably going to feel the same way. But that's my 2 cents on what happened.
So there was quite a bit of discussion, and initially it seemed like the temperature in the room was toward the vehicle registration fee because it is a more stable source of revenue and maybe a higher source of revenue. Then the conversation swayed over to the gas tax, partly because the Portland gas tax had passed easily, and so they thought, well, if you come in at 8 cents versus 10 cents, that still leaves some headroom for the cities that do have a gas tax, and it creates revenue that isn't seen as onerous because people are just paying as you go. They're not paying it, one time and wondering why is this fee so high. Not that $25 is that high necessarily. And the other compelling argument about the gas tax versus the vehicle registration fee is that it catches tourists, people that are coming through. So you're getting some additional revenue from folks that are visiting here. So it's an additional source of revenue for city roads that we would not have otherwise. And they're encouraging us to put our list of projects that are important to us on the table. So there's that.
Was that the county? So the funds we received, can we use them at our discretion on city or county?
Well, there's two there's two different things. So if it's the vehicle registration fee under the ORS, the county's required to divest 40% of that revenue to the cities
To be used.
for transportation-related projects, maintenance, bike lanes, sidewalks, anything that is, quote, transportation-related is fair game. Currently, under the gas tax scenario, there is no such provision. So until the county comes back, and there were several cities that, well, until we see it in writing, we're not believing, whatever it
Absolutely.
is. So, if they come back and say in writing, we're going to give up 40% of the gas tax revenue to cities to use as they see fit in a transportation-related mode, then I think, we could probably support that. Right now, they have zero support for the gas tax without codifying somehow that sharing of revenues with the cities.
Right.
That is true, but in the conversation, all 5 commissioners were there, and 3 of them verbally said that they would support a
It doesn't mean
60-40
anything.
split. So
It doesn't
with
mean anything.
witnesses, so.
Rocky, you're such a cynic.
It doesn't mean anything. You know it doesn't mean anything.
Well, I think that there is certainly a lot, in the graph, you'll see the volatility of the gas tax as you came into the recession and driving dropped on a combination of more fuel-efficient vehicles. So it is a less reliable source, but I would agree that it was the one that had consensus around the table.
So, further discussion? We're not really making a decision here.
No, that was, because we got to wait to
guess
hear
a
from
couple
them.
things that I thought about was I would definitely want to see the math. Their math seemed a little broken in terms of the 8 cents, 6 cents. So
It's not so.
see the math, see the split in reality, and then have that a commitment, because I still kind of took away 40-60 to the cities. Does that include the unincorporated piece, or how was the county playing with those numbers? I think that there's still a lot of latitude, so I think it'd be good to see. They were also asking for city support in the form of a resolution. So that would, I guess my question is, are you expecting staff to bring you a resolution, or do you want to wait till we
Wait.
see something from the county? And then I guess the other thing is just talking to, I had a chance to talk to somebody I know at Washington County and actually further south in the city of Roseburg recently, and they were talking about some of the success and failure with gas tax votes, and how having the county pretty focused on road maintenance and the city's focused on, whatever they wanted to spend it on. The consensus was it was important that the cities provide details on, more detail on what they want to really focus those dollars on. And, just thinking about tonight's conversation, maybe there's a component of that goes for SDC buy-downs or something, maybe that's a way to utilize that. Or, there's I've got several ideas. I don't know if you want those yet or not, but I'd be happy to share them with you, Mayor. I'll do it in email form then. How's that? I'll just give you.
Yeah, I think, it's understandable that any department head would look at a new revenue source and not be going like this. But at the same time, we also have to, again, consider that we have a long-term goal of getting a police station built, and I don't want this thing to jeopardize that boat. The other thing I would encourage people to understand is that it's pretty easy to get to 60 or 7% in an advisory vote where they're not telling you how much money you're going to have to pay, and it's substantially harder to get to 51% when they're actually asking you for money. So with that,
Would the commission like us, staff, to communicate with the county in terms of they need to clarify that under either scenario there will be a local share?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think there's too many gray areas to even ask us to do a resolution of any
Yeah.
sorts. So they need to get it clear.
I think the other would be, how that 40% of the local jurisdictions is split, whether it's under the registration fee or the gas tax. Population does seem to be relatively simple, barring a great argument for some other methodology for how it's dispersed. I don't see a reason why we couldn't support that, but that they should clarify how this methodology is going to break down so the local jurisdictions can understand exactly what the proposal is.
Okay. So Commissioner Mangelberg asked that the under the consent agenda that item 8A be pulled. So we're going to look at 16327 to award of public improvement contract to Trenchline Excavation Inc. for the construction of the 15th Street water line replacement project. Mr. Lewis. Weren't expecting that one, were you?
No, but thank you for Commissioner Mangelberg gave me a short heads up before the meeting, so that's great. So the question that I understood you had was just about concern for impacts of such a significant project. This project is a water main replacement project from Main Street in 15th Street from Main Street to Division Street. So it's several blocks of roadway along a roadway that gets a lot of transportation on it. And so a couple of things, and how do we manage that, right? How do we manage that in a way that's not going to be chaos? And I think it's a great question, just kind of looking at some of the other things besides the water main that we have going in the area this summer. And as a result of this project, there's a gas main relocation on 15th Street from Main to Washington. We need them to move it out of the way so that we can put the water line in a place that's far enough from the sewer and those kind of things. There's another gas line relocation at 15th and Madison, again, to help accommodate our work. There's some electrical facilities in the vicinity of 15th Street and Main Street. We have paving at Madison and from 12th to 15th, and paving in Jackson from 12th to 16th. We've got paving at 9th Street, John Adams, and Monroe Street. Those are all projects that were listed in our contracts for the contractor to be aware of, to be able to work around. We've also got several slurry seal projects in the McLaughlin neighborhood area. So you're right. There's not only is this project complex, we're dovetailing that with several other projects. And I think we've provided adequate specificity about that in the contract for the contractor to understand that work. We also have raised the bar with regard to routine communication on this project with specific plans on how they're going to schedule their work so that we can share that information with the community and know that information ourselves. So there's some specific requirements there. And then we went above and beyond with kind of a section in the contract that's called phasing and sequencing of work. So I didn't have time to make copies for you all, but we've got basically a layout that lays it out in 5 separate sections, knowing that we want those done in maybe 2-block sections. So for instance, the work between Main Street and Washington Street, we're going to close that section of roadway because we've got the railroad to get under, and we've got the sewer line to replace and the gas main to move. So we've given them specifics about how to phase that work to the degree we can. We're not telling them how to do the work. We're just telling them, look, you got to finish this work before you can move to this 2 blocks. We can't have closure of multiple blocks of 15th Street. So I feel pretty good about the detail that we put into thinking about the phasing of this, as well as phasing with other projects. So that's one piece. The other one was you asked about pavement, and 15th Street is on our pavement plan, not for this year. So our plan would be to temporarily patch that with an asphalt patch that'll be drivable, but it still will not be what the standard that we'd want, which is a full repave of 15th Street. That's planned for the following year. So we would be doing all the water line work this year, patching it back, living with it through the winter, and then putting it on the pavement maintenance utility project list for 2017. And that's that program. That's worked pretty well for us. We're doing with that with some of the sewer rehab projects, and we think that makes sense for this one here. Now, if we get more gas taxes, I have another project figured out for this one too, so we can fix curbs, sidewalks, other things like that. But does that answer your question?
So when it's paved, the entire street would be repaved then, right? Not just the section where the water line, like a half street where the water line is. So the good citizens that are driving up and down that road for, often are going to be rewarded, next year with a brand new beautiful street.
Yes, the pavement will be brand new. There's still, unless we get additional funding, problems with curbs and some of the sidewalks along there, but we're going to take care of the pavement maintenance. So it will be from curb to curb, new roadway.
And does this project then kind of take that section off the moratorium list? Is that why we're doing it?
This section is no longer on the moratorium list, so we're
Okay.
out of the neighborhood with moratorium in the McLaughlin neighborhood. McLaughlin neighborhood doesn't include Lynn Avenue, so we don't have any moratorium needs up there.
So would you be routing traffic instead of up 15th? Would they go up by the swimming pool? Would you have detours in place along that?
It's going to
Right.
vary. Obviously, when we're working in 15th Street down near Main Street, we're going to detour to 14th Street. When we're in the next section, it's going to be a little harder because the blocks don't go through between Washington and Madison, so it'll be 12th Street detour. Same with Section 2, which is up to Jackson Street. Once we get to Jackson Street, the detour is on 16th and pretty much stays on 16th all the way to Division. So again, in those segments, we'll be having to work detours, and it kind of also depends on how close, is the water line in the middle of the road or is it up near the curb? Whether or not we can accommodate, how easily we can accommodate local traffic.
And the hospital knows the sequencing and all the schedule.
We have been talking to the hospital, but I don't know that they know the details of the
Have you been
sequencing.
talking to AMR?
For one,
Yeah,
we-
'cause
we
that's
will
a
reach
big
out to
part.
all those folks when
Okay.
we have
Yeah.
a detailed schedule.
All right. So I have a couple of questions. One, last summer on the 9th Street thing, we had some issues with, guys taking a lunch break and leaving garbage all over the parking strip and all that stuff. I assume that you have something in the contract with these guys about making sure that they're cleaning up their messes and all that sort of thing.
Well, I didn't look for that section to see if we've got something like that, but we were able to turn that around.
Right.
So it's
As long as we're
typically you wouldn't have to address that in contract.
As long as we're paying attention.
Yeah.
And then are we going to do some kind of surveying as far as, since curbs and sidewalks probably aren't going to be in this thing, are we going to do a video survey on both sides of the street before the project starts so that, when they crush a piece of curbing with a piece of equipment that we have enough evidence to say, no, that isn't how it was and you have to fix it?
We've already taken still photos. We haven't taken video, but
Okay.
a lot of still photos along that area. So,
Okay.
I guess we should evaluate whether or not videos make sense there.
Then my last question is, the Abernathy Center is at the corner of
Right.
Center and
Somebody's winning.
Washington and 15th, and depending on how you phase that could literally cut them off from their entire piece over by Abernathy Creek and all that. So have you made arrangements to make sure that the Abernathy isn't going to be disproportionately impacted by that work?
I haven't personally, but our team has. So that was
Okay.
a point of discussion, and they were going to reach out to those Abernathy folks. As far as I know, that's been handled, but I'll make a note of it and make sure.
Because that's the only business I really see that possibly is severely impacted by that. The doctor's offices, they're still going to be able to get in and out, off of what is that? Whatever that is.
Yeah, the other thing is right now we're working on a citywide brochure that has all major projects that we know of, whether they're capital improvement projects funded by the city or development related projects or franchise utility related projects. So our intent is to mail that out with details on how to access our web page to look for more detailed information about schedule, those kind of things. So we've got a lot of work going on around town and trying to communicate that. Really, we're going to lean pretty heavily on our website for that.
Makes sense. Anybody else?
Okay.
Right.
So I'm having some concrete work done at my house right now. And
This is relevant how?
And we noticed that the color of my concrete versus what your folks did on 9th Street, yours is basically white. Is there any way to avoid that? And come to find out that it depends on where you get your concrete from. So the gentleman that's doing my concrete work it's more of kind of a gray color, kind of blends a little better with the rest of the neighborhood. Whereas the white color that you've been using at these corners, are we going to continue that color scheme?
It doesn't stay white for very long.
Well, this has. I mean,
Has
this
it?
is,
Really?
yeah.
It's kind of tending into the discriminatory category, don't you think, Mr. Shaw?
Well,
I haven't heard that issue, and it surprises me that even within the region we're seeing different colors like that. I'll have to take a look.
yeah, and I asked my contractor. They says, yeah, it just depends on where you get your concrete from. You can almost says, yeah, that probably came from Calor or something like that. He says, this is coming from this place. So it's interesting because those corners really stand out, especially in a historic neighborhood. So I'm trying to figure out if there's some way to not continue that.
Dirty.
It's pretty hard to match, concrete today to concrete that was poured 100 years
Well,
ago.
it then
too.
can be toned down, as my contractor said. He says it can be toned down. So.
All right, have we beat this horse to
Yes.
death? Then I consider a motion.
For
Well,
For the thing.
Oh,
so we pulled this from the
We pulled
consent
that.
agenda, so I need a motion.
Okay. Move to approve 16-327 water line replacement project.
Second.
Discussion? Call roll.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Polly,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. So, the rest of the consent agenda, motion, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Move to approve. Any further discussion? Then call roll, please.
Mayor, who seconded that?
I did.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Smith. Motion by Commissioner Megerberg, or was it Commissioner Polly?
I made the motion.
Oh, okay, Commissioner Polly.
Thank you. We had a
Glitch?
difficulty.
Well, at least the monitors work today.
Not all of them.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Polly,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. Let the record reflect that Commissioner Megelberg, oh, there it went down, okay, all right. She voted for you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we're on communications, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Ask Chief Band to provide an update on grand jury.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. You will probably see that there was a news release that has gone out that the grand jury was held today for the shooting that took place a few weeks ago. That investigation was done by the Clackamas County Major Crimes Team. So the majority of the investigators were from other agencies, but there was one of the leads was one of our detectives. So we've been involved in the investigations, but not the majority of it's been done by other people. A lot of people don't know what a grand jury is. They hear the term grand jury. Basically, in Oregon, if the state is ever going to charge anybody with a felony level crime, we can arrest somebody for a felony. But if they're going to actually be charged, that is taken by the district attorney's office before if you get jury duty, sometimes your jury duty is grand jury. And 7 grand jurors sit for a month at a time, and then everything from the investigation, interviews, all the evidence gets taken before the grand jurors, which was the case in this shooting. In a nutshell, Mr. Moore was trying to take one of our officers' guns. And one of the remarkable things that came back in DNA, I'm wearing a gun. Nobody touches my gun but me. And if you swab my gun, the only DNA on my gun is going to be mine. Nobody touches. That's generally the case with any officer's gun. Just one thing that came back from the crime lab was the major contributor to the DNA on one of our officers' guns was from Mr. Moore. And that's not from brushing up, but it really speaks to the degree to which
They were struck.
this guy was trying to get that gun out of his holster, and not just get the gun out, but he also saw him trying to get his finger in to pull the trigger. And at the time that happened, our officer said it was around to the front of him, and there's just really no choice at that point. I talked to both of our officers today after grand jury. They'd not gotten the results back, but they were very happy that it was over. They were happy to get to go in front of people and talk about this, people who are citizens, and tell their story about what happened. It's tragic for them. To them, our officer in particular, I can tell you, who was the shooter, said to me at one point, he said, "You know me, Jim. You know that what my MO is de-escalating and talking people down," and he kind of fancies himself somebody who can talk anybody down. But he said, "I never had the choice. Never had the chance." He also told me that when he got done testifying, that one of the jurors just looked at him and said, "You saved Officer Plummer's life," and he really did. Guys did a great job. They're going back to work inside of the next week. There will still be an internal audit that we do. In this case, because we've been involved in the investigation, and I've been to some of the briefings and seen what has happened, and there's a lot of DNA and physical evidence that supports their statements. I have a pretty good idea of kind of what happened in terms of, there's no huge, these guys did what they had to do. But we still look by policy, and literally everything we do, is there a way that we can be better, or down the road, is there a way that we can ever try and find a better solution? So that internal review will be taking place, and that's it. If you have any questions,
So,
let me know.
did the grand jury not report back?
Yeah, no true bill.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Mr. Conkle?
Mr. Lewis is going to provide an update on some interpretive signage that's been placed throughout the city.
Question is it going to work?
Yeah.
Looks like it.
So I just wanted to share a tidbit of information that you might be interested in. I'm going to say 6 months ago, we were approached by a group of folks, including Nick Dirkman and Don Slack and Jonathan Stone, about utilization of some funds to add some interpretive signage. And so we've been working on that. So I just thought I'd give you a quick update as to where they're at. It's down near McLaughlin Boulevard and John Storm Park. We've got interpretive freestanding signs, a Welcome to Oregon City sign for boaters to see from the river shore, and interpretive wall-mounted panel signs on the John Storm Park bathroom that basically improve over what was the signage that was there, but also add to it. So this is the Welcome to Oregon, historic Oregon City sign with our logo that's placed on it. You see that as a boater from the boat dock for sure, but anywhere on the river there in front of Oregon City. And so I think it's just a good, denoting where they are, because a lot of boaters don't necessarily know where they're at. Except for them fishermen. Yeah, Brian. We also have these freestanding signs, which are along McLaughlin Boulevard there by McDonald's. So I encourage you to go down and take a look at those. We worked with Karen Morey in particular, so my staff and Karen Morey and Jonathan and Nick, really they put a lot of energy into just proofing these, making sure they were factual and right, and provided interesting information. So there's a Greenway Trail map. There's the George, which is really just telling people about downtown Oregon City and how to get there, and how, what they might find when they get there. So there's two of those actually, one on McLaughlin and the other one's on the John Storm bathroom. Then there's these three interpretive signs, which are a story about George Abernathy Memorial Bridge, new industry on the river, and the confluence of the two rivers. And I like that confluence one. It talks a lot about some of the flooding that has happened over the years. So these are the signs and their locations along the new promenade, I guess, or park area there
It's nice.
along McLaughlin Boulevard. These are the signs on John Storm Park. Again, there's a story about John Storm Park and how it got its name, the historic downtown Oregon City, and what that has to offer, and again the Greenway Trail. The other nice thing about this is most of the funding for the signs were funded as a remnant from the Metro Enhancement Grant, and there was some communication that happened there to get that approved. So we're excited about that as well, because I think we're required to pay for just one of the signs versus all the signs. And with that, I think that's it. So check them out. It's,
Great work.
So,
Thank you.
Nice.
following along with that, I have a question. So, down at the other end of 99, and where it makes the corner to the Legacy project, there are these big concrete panels that were obviously planned to have brass plaques inset into them, and there are three existing ones, and then I think there's room for like 6 or 9 more panels that never got done. It just looks kind of stupid to have them be there without anything in them. Is there something we can do about that?
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know where you're talking about. It's been several years since I've been down there, so I don't recall what's on the plaques. Do you recall what's on the existing plaques?
Oh, it's some of the same
I
kinds of
remember.
things as
Yeah.
this.
So,
But it just seemed silly that we built these big concrete structures to have these plaques in, and yet there's no plaques in them.
I'll look into it. I don't know why they don't have more plaques in them, or why they originally built that way.
They're benches facing the river.
Well, they're benches,
Right.
but they have.
But the
I
backs-
guess I don't know why
The
Yeah,
backs,
so
the backs of them
the-
had the insets set
Right.
up for these plaques, but they only put 3 of them in for some reason.
Right.
I'll look into it.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay, Mr. Conkle.
Library Director Cole.
Yay!
Yes.
Yay.
Happy days are here again.
Been waiting 2 weeks for this.
Good evening, Mayor Holliday and Commissioners. The library is really shaping up. It's really starting to look like a library. Oops, we gotta get our little clicker back on the inside. Have you been by lately? Driven by?
Yeah.
Thank you. It's starting to look really differently on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
This is the sidewalk
Wow.
going out to 6th Street.
Mm-hmm.
And the canopy, and none of these is quite finished, but then on your right is a planter area and then the playground. And there's a little lip down to the playground, and that's because it will be, the rubberized material will fill that in. And that will be laid in a week or 2, pretty soon,
Wow.
or poured,
Rubberized material.
Mhm.
whatever we agreed to, whatever it's called. That is
No,
what
I'm
we'll-
just curious. Is this, and I know I'm being a pain here, but with the recent advent of the question marks about the ground up rubber and causing cancer in soccer players, is this the same kind
It's
of
not
material?
that, is it, Denise? No, it's not that.
Okay, just asking.
And-
It came up when we were discussing it
Okay.
before. It's a great question.
Will the playground be done in time for any of the summer for kids to play on?
When we reopen the library, the playground will also be reopened.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yes, sir. Bike racks. That's just part of them. The peanut.
Wow.
It'll always be the peanut to me. Affectionately known as the
Eventually, it's
peanut.
going to have a piece of glass in there, though, right?
Yep.
Okay.
No, we thought we'd leave a cord. That looks really
They
good.
need something that,
Well, no, I can just imagine. I can imagine my granddaughter crawling in and out through that hole, and what kind of
It
damage
would
that would
be
cause.
really fun, yeah, but no. There will be glass with handprints all over it.
interactive peanut.
This is the wood that is being laid in the foyer that will end up meeting the Carnegie fir from the reference room, former reference room. And it's really interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
And that is in the community room. That's the dark backing that they put in up and under these things.
Yeah, so it'll look like this when it's all done. So.
That's the upstairs. You can see that it is all carpeted. That's the big, and the green things are the plastic covered lights hanging from the ceiling. And that's the wood that surrounds the columns. It looks really nice. The carpet is pretty light. It's gray. It's pretty nice, but it's got these strips of color as well. So that's looking all the way down from the teen area all the way down. And then in the teen area, it is very easily demarked by bright blue carpet and the bright blue walls. And there will be, in that curved area, there will be a big white semicircular shelf. And that's just looking out to the view from there. Looks really nice with carpet. That's it.
Nice.
Definitely shaking up. So it's all coming together. We put out a lot of information about the move, and everybody is pretty much aware. Nobody's upset. Everybody just can't wait for us to get moving. So, any questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So this will take a little bit of coordination. These are the same card. So we were asked to look at some of the old passes that we used to give for free rides on the elevator. And so we looked at some of the old historic ones. So we put together a couple of drafts of, here's two that seem to rise to the top. One has a picture of the elevator on the left with our website on the back. The second one has the elevator on the right side with our logo, and
this is cool.
In the back side with the more of a colored finish on the back side. So just want to circulate these a little bit.
Nice.
I know, try and get some feedback on thoughts on these and try to get this finalized.
Yeah, two things that I'd like to see. One, it should say lifetime pass like it did before. It shouldn't say special pass. And I like the back of, I think the back of that's fine.
That's nice.
We might also put the rediscoverthefalls.org website on there too. Just, as another form of getting people into the Legacy Project. But I'd like to see everybody. I saw a couple of these that had all 5 signatures.
All 5 signatures on them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's just a couple of my comments, but you guys go ahead. But I would like to have these ready for the next partners meeting, which is,
I think it's July 11th or
Yeah.
15th, something
Yeah.
there. And that's all that I have tonight.
okay. Commissioner Shaw, got anything for us?
Well, a couple things, huge things. I mean, like I had to do the Menchie's grand opening.
How'd that go?
That's great. I got some free yogurt out of that, so that was good. That was, me and Mr. Gifford were up there doing some sampling, and so, yeah. So, also did the CIC on Monday night, and went to the Clackamas Transportation Summit at Moot with Mayor Holliday and Commissioner Mildenberg. So, and library meeting with Mo yesterday. So, that's it.
I went to the ribbon cutting for the new patio at the Willamette Falls Media Center, and not only have they rebuilt they didn't rebuild it. They built a new patio out front of the what most of us refer to the art building or the art barn at the old high school, and beautiful patio. But they also found the original doors to the old art building and uncovered them and restored the front entrance, not usable entrance, but at least looks like the entrance now with the original doors.
And it's not a mural.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's really, really cool. So if you get a chance to drive by that up by the old high school. Also, I just wanted to mention that I appreciate the city's willingness and citizens' willingness to allow TV productions to come into Oregon City. And I was surrounded by a city of movie trucks because I live on 11th and Monroe. So they were filming at the pool, they were filming at the old high school, they were filming at Midway Pub. The entire neighborhood was filled with trucks. They set up a small city, which I'm sure most of you saw this weekend. I think all of us up here agree that we should see more of that. We love seeing that, and we know that it's sometimes difficult with traffic and other issues around the city, especially since most of the filming locations are the same locations over and over again. But I'm excited to have them in our town and hope more of that comes. And then I've just been hanging out. It's been nice. School's out. Went to graduation and went to grad party, and so I've taken the last basically taken the last 4 days and done really nothing.
Feel bad for you.
Yeah, so I'll get back into it.
In about August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Commissioner Mangelberg.
I also went to the Willamette Falls Media Center, and in addition to really admiring the patio with the beautiful view of downtown Portland, and I imagine it'd be a wonderful place on a sunset, to see the sunset, got a tour of the inside, and I hadn't really seen that. It's an impressive facility. They have several different rooms where they can be doing things, and it's exciting. Also attended the Oregon City Downtown Economic Restructuring Committee last week. And they talked about the refined retail proposal that they'll be bringing our way. They're also going to be doing a parking study, doing the actual car counts coming up here pretty soon. And they have several new interns, so their work is going to be escalating because they have more staff. So they're very happy about that. Attended the Clackamas County Transportation Summit. And I attended the C4 subcommittee today, and they spent quite a bit of time talking about the East-West Transit Service. And quite a few people were mentioning that they needed more connections between the town center to Wilsonville and Tualatin, that the traditional hub-and-spoke system doesn't work very well for folks in this part of the world. Mm-hmm. We also had a presentation from the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Funding, which is CMAQ funding. It's discretionary funding that brings about $13 million to the region, and it's designed to improve air quality. Well, apparently Portland's air quality has been getting better and better, and Eugene's and Salem's isn't so good, and it's a statewide distribution. So it may mean, it's very likely that in November the decision will be made that Salem and Eugene would be eligible for that funding. And unless the pie gets bigger, that means there'd be less funding. And since it's discretionary funding, it's even harder for some of the projects we might like. But on the other hand, they have frozen the formula since 2009, so there's going to be a strong argument to be made to make the formula higher, so you expand the pie so everybody can benefit. So we'll see about that. And then finally, I wanted to congratulate the Oregon City High School Band. They were the second.
Wow.
They were the second best band in the Rose Parade of over 100 people.
Wow.
And I saw them perform. They were great. So.
I had my picture taken with them before we walked, so yeah, I got to see all those guys. Commissioner Pauly? Or do you want to go last?
Oh, I want to go. Well, I don't know.
I'll let you go last.
Okay.
So, did you not go to MPAC?
No, I didn't.
Okay, all right. So I've had a fairly busy couple of weeks. On Monday the 6th, I met with Bobby Lee from the governor's office to discuss some issues that we have pending with DEQ as far as some projects that we're trying to make happen in Oregon City. Mr. Lee and the governor have committed to helping us resolve those issues, so we're just a couple of little steps closer to making some things happen in Oregon City, and that's about all I can say about that, but I do want to let folks know that we are actively working with the governor's office to make some stuff happen in Oregon City. I went to, let's see, so had a couple other things. went to the Clackamas County Transportation Summit. I did some work back and forth with Ex Libris Productions, which is the folks that are filming the librarians in Oregon City, and just helped them with a couple of minor issues and trying to keep everybody on the same sheet of music and make sure that everybody tries to stay happy as we can. Today I met with a constituent who had some real issues with SDCs until I explained to her what the SDCs were for and what they went to, and she went away as happy as this particular individual will ever go away. So I thought that was a pretty good day. So all in all, I'll be gone the 23rd through the 29th to the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington or in Indianapolis. Other than that, I think we're just marching down the road. So, Commissioner Pauley.
Well, I went to Menchie's too, but unfortunately they changed their ribbon cutting, so I was a little bit too late. But we were in time for free ice cream, so the kids really enjoyed that.
That's all that really matters, right?
Exactly. So I've always been very, it's important to me to communicate and be transparent and upfront. And this is my last meeting, so I will not be coming back in July. So this past year, our immediate family has incurred many new responsibilities due to a death in the family and ensuing aging parent concerns. And I told myself I was going to be tough. In order to juggle all this and put family first, we are relocating close by but outside the city limits. Our children will still attend school here and will continue to be property owners in the city. Since it is a charter requirement that city commissioners live within the city limits, I am resigning as of July 1st as our family makes our change this summer. During my 4 years and 3 months on the commission, I've had the pleasure to work with an enthusiastic, high-level, innovative, and capable staff and sit beside amazing, dedicated public servants who make informed decisions with a heart. I will continue to be involved in the city as a commercial property owner and look forward to serving on a board or a committee that does not have the resident requirement. I can unequivocally say Oregon City is the best place I have lived, and my heart will continue to reside here. Thank you, guys.
All right. Say.
Okay, well, since we are not going to have an opportunity
Yeah.
at another meeting, feel free to say goodbye.
Carol, I think you've been an amazing leader, very gracious, very thoughtful in your deliberations, and very open-minded and level-headed, and you bring such wisdom to the council, and it's really a commission, and it's a loss to the city to have you no longer serve.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you the short time that I have.
Mr. Shaw?
Well, when I ran for this office, I took into account Ms. Pauley here, Commissioner Pauley, that was up here also, because and everybody was up here in Rocky, and that kind of helped make my decision to step into this position. So thank you, Carol, for all. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, you got to look at what's going to be happening here, and I was hoping you were going to be here for the duration stuff, but I understand these family things and stuff, and I'm happy to hear you're still going to be involved here.
Absolutely.
We're still going to see your face around
Yes, you will.
the city and stuff here. So it's just just stepping forward for this office like you did, and taking the time out. Here you are raising a family and everything and stuff. So appreciate all your efforts here with not only the commission, but raising your family and everything, and running a successful business in this community. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Carol, I want to just say thank you, and I want to tell you that you were an amazing commissioner, and I think that's the toughest thing for all of us. Is we know that you'll stay involved in this community. We know we're going to see you. We know we're going to still work with you. but this is a big loss for the commission, and I really love you. I think you're a great person. I think you really care a lot about the city, and in 8 years of being on this commission, I would say you're right up there as one of the best commissioners I've worked with, and I just think that you care so much, and you've been a good advocate for business, for downtown, for the city's history, and so many other areas. And I just hope that you continue to do that. I know you will, and can't wait to work with you in other ways in the future. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rocky, and you are an amazing commissioner, so that means a lot coming from you.
Staff?
I got something to say. I was actually going to ask if I could, and I'm going to have to make it quick. I just want to say you were a commissioner at a time where we went through some stuff I'll never forget. I will never forget the mayor and commission that was on at that time. Your support for our agency, everything that they have said about how good you are, how quietly strong you are. I have really loved having you here, and I'll never forget your support during one hell of a tough time. So we'll miss you.
Thank you, Chief Mann.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to say I really think you're an amazing woman. I've appreciated the stories about your personal life and your kids and learning all those kind of things. It takes the business piece and puts it in a bit of a personal level, even though it's not really that kind of a relationship, but I've appreciated that. And the fact that you've always brought good questions and, given staff a heads up. I mean, it has been an honor working with you, and I'm sorry to see you leave.
Thank you. You've all been very patient listening to me gush about my kids. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
They're great stories.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something. Carol, don't tell anybody, but you've always been my favorite. No, I just so appreciate
Betty's listening, by the way.
So much for the library.
I'm going to be at that ribbon
I know,
cutting, right?
I know. I'm just so
That's
pleased that
so
I know I'm going to
important.
see you at the library, because I just
Yeah.
appreciate all of your support, your cheerleading, your caring. You're just fabulous, and it is really a huge loss, but I'm so glad that we're going to still get to see you.
I'm
Thank
gonna
you
be
for everything.
hanging out in the library a lot.
I know, I know we've got your spot
When
already
I wait for the
assigned.
kids to get out of school, so I don't have to drive back and forth. Excellent.
I'd like to say something, Carol. You stepped into a situation sort of as an unknown, and sort of it's always interesting to see new commissioners and how quickly they adjust and how well they adjust. And I got to say, you stepped right in and calmly and with a real focus on doing what's best. You always asked right questions, took advice, but you always led with what's best for the city and the citizens of the city, and that's been incredibly impressive.
Thank you, Bill.
Mr. Conkle?
Commissioner Pauly, on behalf of all of the staff at Oregon City, we just want to say thank you, and it's been such a pleasure and an honor to work with you. I'd like to echo what Chief Ban said. You dealt with some things most people never have to deal with, and you did it with grace and with leadership and thoughtfulness and caring, and you didn't have to do that, but you did, and it was noticed, and it was really, really appreciated. You've been with us through some great times. Personally, I just really do want to say thank you. It has been wonderful working with you. Your leadership on Willamette Falls. You just have a composure about you that shows in public and in private. It will be missed, and I wish you and your family all the best. And so on behalf of, once again, the staff, and I would hope all the citizens, for all the hours and effort that you've put in, it is greatly appreciated. So wish you all the best.
So last one on the spot, Mr. Gifford. You can speak for the citizens at large. And then from there.
Time this.
30
seconds.
Please.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Commissioner Pauley, you are a star, and there's no one that's going to deny that. You're a classy dame. You really are. I've known you for a number of years. I've always supported you, and will continue to do so in whatever endeavors you pursue. I just will miss you, of course. Want to know how soon you're coming back.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. All the best to the family, and my love for the kids.
Thank you. And the reason why this city is so great is because of citizens like you and everybody that steps in and volunteers all their time. This is an amazing city that has so many volunteers and people that care about the city and help steward the city.
You're at the top of the list.
So I'll go last, as I usually do. Carol, I can't thank you enough for all of the work that you've given to the city, not only during my term, but in the previous iteration. And I think a lot of people don't understand the kinds of time that we put in that you don't see us sitting here. But there are, as we try to report, there are numerous meetings, whether it's metro or county or other things that we're involved in here in the city that take up really a lot of time, and people don't quite understand how much time that really takes. I know, having been a city commissioner in the past and then becoming mayor, the mayor's thing was substantially more time consuming than I expected it to be. So thanks for all of your time, and you're that person on the commission that can give me that look to tell me that I probably ought to tone it down a little or something like that. So
then
we're gonna miss that.
I better show up and sit next to you all the time and still give you that look.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You just have to look out there.
So while I have had an idea that this was possibly coming, it was certainly a surprise for that to be happening so soon. Although I have confidence that we have other citizens out there in the community that will be able to step up. Let me talk just a second about the process here. In the city charter, if a candidate resigns within 180 days of a general election, we are not allowed to appoint a replacement. So we will be running as a 4-person board until the first Tuesday in November, until January of next year, until we can seat a new city commissioner. So that's why I was hoping that Carol could push this down the line a little farther. She can't. I completely respect her for being, totally honest and above board and not trying to, pull some other kind of thing. On a positive note, we do have an open seat on the Urban Renewal Commission that was recently vacated by Mr. Benville. And I know currently we're in the process of doing that selection, so I'd encourage Carol to apply for that seat on the Urban Renewal Commission. I know that you're in the same kind of mode that the rest of us are about getting stuff done, and so that might be a good way for you to continue your service and continue to be involved with us, at least on some minor level. I know there is no requirement for just have to be a business owner, right? Or property owner?
To be a voter for urban renewal, yes. That's why Mr. Benville's off the commission. He's not registered as a voter here in Oregon City.
Well, let's check that, because we had some folks that were on the Urban Renewal Commission in the past that were representing that weren't inside the city limits. So
in previous versions, I think the last time that the Urban Renewal Commission was reconstituted, the commission changed the requirements, which they're authorized to do.
So we can fix that. Well, I'm just saying, if we write the rules, then we can fix it. All right, so anyway, Carol, there just is no way to say thank you enough for all the things that you've done, not only for the city, but for me personally, and the kind of leadership and example you set up here every time that you're here. So we will definitely miss you, and hopefully there'll be a time in the future that you'll come back to Oregon City. If not, I definitely see you in the state legislature or county or some other place, because you are truly an exemplary leader.
Well, thank you. I feel very humbled. So you can all stop gushing now. And I know the city's in great hands. So you guys are awesome. Awesome team.